Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. For Duggar family latest news update, please subscribe the channel and press the bell icon. The early morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of the Duggar family home in Tontitown, Arkansas, illuminating a quiet stillness that was rare in a house that had once been brimming with life. Michelle Duggar, usually the picture of serene composure, stood in the doorway of the family kitchen with a cup of herbal tea in hand, staring out the window. Her eyes were distant, searching for a clarity she had struggled to find in recent months. After nearly 40 years of marriage, Michelle and Jim Bob Duggar, the couple once hailed as the cornerstone of conservative Christian family values, had made a decision that would rock the core of not just their family, but the legions of fans who had followed them since the early days of 19 Kids and Counting. They were getting divorced. The announcement came on a Monday morning via a joint statement released on social media. After much prayer, counseling, and soul-searching, we have decided to separate and pursue individual healing. This is not a decision made lightly. Our family is hurting, but we remain committed to peace and grace moving forward. We ask for privacy during this time. The internet exploded. Whispers had circulated for years about internal strife, growing divisions among the older Duggar children, and differences in how the family's beliefs were evolving. But no one expected this. What had gone so wrong in a relationship built on faith, family, and devotion? Behind closed doors, the Duggar household had changed since the show ended in 2015. With many of the children grown and married, and the family no longer under the watchful eye of television cameras, Jim Bob and Michelle found themselves facing the very thing they had spent decades avoiding: each other. Once the spotlight faded, so did the distraction, said a family friend who wished to remain anonymous. They had to sit with themselves, their choices, and the silence. Jim Bob, known for his strong will and patriarchal stance, struggled with the idea of relinquishing control. He was a planner, a builder, and a man who saw himself as the spiritual head of the household. Michelle, ever the nurturing mother, had lived much of her adult life tending to pregnancies, toddlers, homeschooling, and managing a home of 21 people. Now, with the kids out building lives of their own, the two found themselves at a crossroads. The roles they had lived for decades no longer defined them, said a close family counselor. When the identity of mom and dad fades, you're left with the individual, and sometimes that's not enough. As the Duggar children matured, so did their perspectives. Jinger Duggar Volo, in particular, publicly distanced herself from the teachings of Bill Gothard and the Institute in Basic Life Principles, IVLP, which had heavily influenced the Duggar family's lifestyle. Her memoir, Becoming Free Indeed, stirred tension within the family. Michelle quietly read the book in her prayer closet, tears streaming down her face, not from anger, but from a dawning realization that the rigid path she had walked might have led her children to pain rather than purpose. Jim Bob, however, was not so reflective. He thought Jinger was being rebellious, said a relative. He saw the book as an attack on their values and refused to accept any criticism of how they raised their kids. Michelle, caught in the middle, began to question the teachings she had clung to for so long. The more she prayed, the more she felt called to empathy and open-hearted listening, not control and correction. This difference in worldview created a rift between her and Jim Bob that no amount of prayer could mend. The final straw came during a family gathering in early 2025. Most of the children and their spouses had returned home for what was meant to be a weekend of fellowship and bonding. But tensions boiled over during a family devotional led by Jim Bob. When he began admonishing the younger children about drifting from God's path, Jill Duggar Dillard, long estranged from the family, stood up and walked out. Michelle followed. Outside, under the fading light of the Arkansas sky, Jill and Michelle talked for hours. Michelle wept as she listened to Jill recount stories of emotional control, silence, and the pain of feeling like she never had a voice. It was a turning point. Michelle returned to the house and, for the first time in years, told Jim Bob he had gone too far. She found her voice that day, said an insider, and it was powerful. The months that followed were quiet but marked by internal struggle. The couple attended marital counseling, both through their church and privately. Jim Bob hoped counseling would realign Michelle with her role. Michelle, however, was beginning to see a different kind of future, one where she could have friendships, volunteer, write, and even travel without guilt. She wanted to find herself, said one of her longtime friends. She had spent decades pouring out every drop of herself into being a wife and mother. Now, she wanted to know who Michelle was. For Jim Bob, this shift felt like betrayal. The marriage became less a partnership and more a philosophical chasm. They shared a roof, meals, and even devotions, but their hearts were no longer aligned. In June 2025, they made the decision. They sat down with their children in two groups, first the older married ones, then the younger at-home children, and explained, through tears and trembling voices, that they were separating. Some of the children were supportive, others shocked, and a few, particularly those still deeply aligned with the family's old teachings, were dismayed. But Michelle and Jim Bob emphasized that this decision was made not from hatred, but from honesty. "We no longer bring each other peace," Michelle told her children, "and God is not glorified in a home full of quiet bitterness." Now, weeks after the announcement, the Duggar family is adjusting to a new normal. Jim Bob has stepped back from public ministry and remains in Tontitown, living in a smaller property near the main house. Michelle has temporarily relocated to a nearby retreat center for women seeking healing after long-term marriages, with plans to start a devotional blog focused on rediscovering identity in Christ after motherhood. The children, meanwhile, have shown a range of responses. Jessa has issued a quiet no comment on social media. Jill and Derek have voiced support for healing and honesty. Duggar posted a photo of a sunset with the caption, "Even the sun must set to rise again." Epilogue: when the dust settles. The story of Michelle and Jim Bob Duggar's divorce isn't just about the end of a marriage. It's about the breaking open of a system that held two people in place long after love had transformed into duty. It's about growth, pain, courage, and surrender. Michelle Duggar, once seen as the quintessential submissive wife, is now walking a road of self-discovery. Jim Bob Duggar, the iron-willed patriarch, is facing life not as the head of a sprawling empire, but as a man who must reckon with the consequences of power, silence, and resistance to change. And the Duggar children? They're watching, learning, and redefining legacy in their own way. Because sometimes, healing looks like breaking, and freedom comes when the silence ends. Joy Anna Duggar's dance video, showing the different outfits of motherhood, has people giggling. Anyone who's caught a few episodes of 19 Kids and Counting already knows that the Duggar kids have had very different childhoods from what many of us experienced growing up. Being under the umbrella of Bill Gothard and the Institute in Basic Life Principles meant that they weren't able to enjoy mainstream movies or music and had to follow a restrictive dress code. Of course, dancing was totally off the table because it is considered too sinful. And now that Joy Anna Duggar is making the choice to break another one of the rules she used to live by, fans are cheering. Joy Anna Duggar showed off her moves in a new video. In the video, Joy is dancing to Justin Timberlake's "Can't Stop the Feeling" as she changes into different outfits to show what a wide variety of clothing she has in her closet. "One day I'm Pinterest mom, next day I'm just happy I'm dressed," she wrote in her caption, adding, "Can you tell I didn't dance as a kid?" Fans are cheering her on in the comments. In the comments, so many of Joy's followers applauded her dancing. She might not have the same moves as a professional would, but plenty of people were proud of her for doing something that was forbidden while she was growing up. "I've been following your family since before some of your siblings were even born, and I gotta say I love this content," one comment said. "You harmlessly dancing around. full of literal joy singing and rocking these outfits. "You seem so happy, and watching this made me happy." Another person added, "Oh my gosh, I could cry watching how happy you are dancing. Not to mention to a great song. I'm so happy for you." Her critics have a lot of thoughts. On a popular Duggar-related subreddit, Joy's critics aren't all that happy for her for breaking the rules and dancing instead. Some took this opportunity to point out that this is just one of the ways the Duggars are making their religious beliefs more relatable. It's all part of the overall rebranding of fundamentalism into something more palatable to the general public, so I'm not sure Jim Bob Duggar cares as much as we think, one person wrote. "It's all a rebranding strategy, and it's working. Do they even know what real dancing is?" said another comment. "They all give the idea that their lifestyle is amazing. Some members of the family only started dancing very recently." Joy-Anna Duggar and Austin Forsyth admit they broke Jim Bob's courtship rules. When it comes to dating one of Jim Bob Duggar's daughters, we've heard plenty about just how strict his courtship rules can be. Because the children of the family date with the intent to marry the person they're courting, Jim Bob thoroughly vets any man who has been interested in one of his girls, and even once they get his seal of approval, they have to follow his guidelines. But now, Austin Forsyth is coming clean. He and Joy didn't follow those rules quite as closely as her dad would have liked. While talking with his sister and brother-in-law, Austin opened up about courting Joy-Anna in the early days of their relationship, something he wasn't too familiar with because it wasn't the way his family did things, despite the fact that they were also pretty conservative. But because his family had been close with the Duggars for years, he did know that this was the way they did things, and he was willing to give it a shot. That meant that all of his dates with Joy were chaperoned, though, and that's when they ended up bending the rules. They still found a way to get one-on-one time together if they wanted to have a private conversation. However, even though that was technically against the rules, "We tell Justin to go sit in the truck," he said, later adding, "I'd be like, hey, we're going to talk. You go over there, Justin. You go in the next room," or whatever. Fortunately, because Justin already knew Austin from their families interacting and had a level of trust and respect, he'd go along with it. Fans have a lot of thoughts about Austin's confession. Fans on a popular Duggar-related subreddit have been discussing this part of the podcast, and they seem to appreciate the confirmation about the broken rules. "I am not saying they broke all the rules, but this seems to confirm what some of us believe, that they did more than hold hands prior to marriage," the OP wrote. One commenter wrote, "Glad Austin didn't mention this until after Justin got out of the house. Justin's probably getting an angry phone call from GB right about now." Jill Duggar says husband Derek is taking a sabbatical from his career as a lawyer. Jill Duggar and her husband, Derek Dillard, have taken a different route in their lives than many of her married sisters. For much of their early marriage, Derek was still in law school, and now the couple is finally getting to enjoy the fruits of his labor. But is his career path changing after all of that hard work? Jill has finally confirmed that Derek is switching things up, at least for now. Rumors about Derek's career began last month. Just under a month ago, critics on Reddit discovered that Derek's LinkedIn profile indicates that he left his job as an assistant district attorney for the state of Oklahoma, a job he's held since 2022. In January, now his employment on his profile indicates that he's an attorney at Dillard Law. Is he starting his own law firm? So far, he hasn't shared any updates on his career himself, so critics have been trying to guess what's going on behind the scenes. Now, Jill is setting the record straight. During a Q&A on her Instagram stories, which has since expired, a fan asked if Derek was still working as a lawyer. Derek actually recently left his job of nearly 3 years, prosecuting attorney/AJ in Oklahoma, and is taking a sabbatical period for a while, working on some personal endeavors. A very welcome change of pace for all of us, Jill wrote, according to the Ashley's Reality Roundup. It wasn't all that long ago that Jill and Derek moved for his job. After Derek graduated from law school and passed the bar exam, he and Jill shared a post on their blog announcing that they were moving to a new home near the Oklahoma border. At the time, they wrote that they were moving for a new job Derek recently accepted and are super excited for new adventures. We are sad to say goodbye to our very first home that we bought 3 years ago, but pray it brings much joy to the next family who will get to make memories here, the couple wrote in their post, which has since been deleted. Critics have a lot of thoughts about Derek's personal endeavors. After Jill confirmed that Derek was on sabbatical, critics weighed in on Reddit, and many seemed concerned about what she might have meant when she said Derek was focusing on personal endeavors. If these personal endeavors don't start paying the bills, this change of pace will wear out its welcome real quick, one person wrote. So he doesn't have a job. Why are we surprised? He was an accountant missionary, underwent training to be a pastor, and now a lawyer, someone else commented. Maybe pilot is next. As someone who has practiced for 20 years, I would love to take a sabbatical, but for some reason the bills have to be paid every month. Anyone I know who left to take time off never went back to law. News: Jill Duggar's new hairdo causes backlash. Jill Duggar Dillard and her husband Derek were overjoyed when they found out they were expecting their fourth child, a baby girl. Her name would be Esla Marie Dillard, and she was already loved by her parents and her 3 older brothers. They eagerly waited for her arrival, dreaming of the day she would fill their home with her cries, her coos. But sometimes, life doesn't follow the plan. At a routine checkup, they heard the words no parent ever wants to hear: there is no heartbeat. Their beautiful baby girl had died in the womb. She was stillborn just months before her expected birth. The couple shared their heartbreak publicly. It is with heavy hearts that we announce the stillbirth of our beautiful baby girl, Isla Marie Dillard. From the moment we found out we were pregnant, we couldn't wait to meet our baby. They held a memorial service for Isla. There was a tiny white coffin, soft toys, handwritten notes, and pale pink flowers. Her name, Isla, meaning devoted to God, and Marie, meaning wished for child, reflected how deeply wanted and cherished she was. Jill and Derek's 3 sons had looked forward to meeting their baby sister. They never got the chance. We will love you forever and hold you in our hearts until we hold you in heaven. Jill Duggar is one of the Duggars who has done the most whistleblowing out of the family. Duggar News followers understand it's not easy going after the people who raised her, but they have been appreciative of her for speaking her truth and calling out the problematic elements. Now, most of Jill's posts surround her home life, her loving husband